After the team had explored zero-based measure options, we exposed them to a series of best practice research papers and resources that we've been using and gathering over the years. Now, we're pulling from about 10 or 15 different sources, but in truth, after you've looked at 2 or 3, there's a tremendous overlap between the benchmark and available comparative data. The sort of information we provided is in the operations area. There are 4 ways that we presented the best practice information. The first is trying to help the team understand the sort of metrics we're looking for. To help grade the measures, we built a 2x2 where on the left axis we're looking at the strategic view from the typical IT measures, which are fairly self-referential, to those which are more linked to corporate strategy. And across the horizontal axis, the metric time horizon, whether it's transactional in that point in time or towards the system or transaction lifecycle. Down in the left-hand corner, we identified measures that we call baseline. These are things in the operations area where we're measuring the performance of individual systems, things like, uptime and availability. Many of the current RBC metrics may fit into this category. Slightly more strategic and slightly farther in time are sort of aggregated views of operational performance. We're looking more at desktop availability, percentage of systems compliant with architecture and standards, and so forth. And then finally, in the top right-hand corner, the best-in-class metrics, we're looking for metrics along the lines of availability of key systems at peak times, critical process uptime, and so forth, where we're identifying what are the critical processes, what are the critical times, and are we able to, across the life cycle of that product, have it available at the right time. And obviously we're trying to progress our metrics towards that top right-hand corner. We gave a second view, which is trying to describe the general categories or groupings, goals of measures we find inside of an operations strategic objective. So there are things in this example like you're measuring the performance of individual systems, looking at this aggregated view of operational performance, and looking at it from the end user's perspective. And we're not providing specific measures here, but what is the general thought or concept we're looking for the measures to support? Third, we provided a categorization of the best measures that are most frequently used, and we categorized them in several common categories and some unique to each objective. Common categories are things like what are the most common metrics, what are the user-centric ones. The fourth best practice measure resource we provided was some analysis that we had done based on the strategic objectives in the retail and wealth management strategy map. What indicators are out there? So for example, if I go down to the operations area that we were just looking at, we looked at all the metrics under the categories of what type of indicator were they. So were they a leading or lagging indicator, which we looked at as were they input, transformational, or output. We analyzed them for were they measuring cost, quality, or time. And lastly, what type of scorecard they'd be most appropriate for: valuation, navigation, compensation, calibration, evaluation. With the understanding that each process may need to be measured in a different way, leading or lagging. We may be interested in different attributes, cost, quality, or time. And finally, we're focusing in on the navigational type of scorecards in this initial set of metrics. So between those 4 resources, the team was equipped with a number of best practice measures to overlay on their zero-based analysis and their analysis of what metrics were currently used. In terms of a quick overview of the work that the team went through, the overall process that we'll be working on is the understanding that strategy drives what it is we need to measure. Once you understand the strategy, we can break that down to the individual goals that make up each strategic objective. The goals themselves are supported by critical processes, activities, be they processes or projects that the organization does to create those outcome goals. Those processes themselves have specific output measures that contribute to each of the goals. And in fact, there are key activities within those processes that themselves have specific process measures. The purpose of this first week of work is to deal with the front end of this value stream, taking a look at the strategic objectives and the strategic goals. The next phase, phase 2, will worry about measuring the drill down or the process activities. The overall schedule is this. We're going to identify the strategic objectives goals, then identify what each stakeholder needs within those goals, because the stakeholders' needs are different, whether it's an internal or external customer, senior management, and so forth. We then need to develop a list of indicators, and we're going to do that in 3 different ways. Zero-based, without consideration of what's currently collected, what's available in the organization, how we currently measure it. Secondly, what do we currently look at? And third, what are best practices? And from there, we'll select the measures that we would choose to use inside the organization. Finally, we need to take some thought about how the actual reports might look. The schedule for these activities is roughly along this line. And then within each strategic objective area, what are the unique groupings of metrics or goals we see? So in this example, IT inventory and contracts, help desk performance, networks and systems performance, and operational strategy adoption. Again, these are best practice measures that are then put into context through the team. Finally, we provided them with a detailed set of metrics.